Hey everyone, welcome to the Beyond Extend podcast number 2, a podcast dedicated to a chat between two environment artists discussing everything about the industry we work in. I'm Timothy, and I'm joined by William, who is a friend and fellow colleague of mine. In this episode, we will be discussing how it was to get our first job in the industry, crunch in the games industry, and how we both managed to get through uni in our own ways. There's lots of interesting stuff in this one, so let's dive straight in. Hi William, welcome back man for the second round.
Yeah, I'm excited. What's going on? How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I've been pretty busy with just managing stuff. I've been working on the newsletter, working on the blog, working on preparations for like the next tutorials, which you're a part of too, which is super exciting.
Yeah,
I'm really looking forward to releasing like the first tutorial or the first podcast because at this time that first podcast hasn't gone out yet. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm
yeah. That's gonna be really interesting, man.
well, actually, when you hear this, the first podcast is already on. So yeah, I still need to
Yeah,
get used to that.
yeah.
How are
We'll
you
have to
doing?
get used to the timeline. I'm doing good as well. I'm in the last 2 days of my little vacation, little home vacation.
Oh yeah, don't
Um,
remind me, man.
yeah, and yeah, I'm also I started to work on getting everything set up for the tutorial. Gonna hopefully be able to record that soon. So yeah, I'm excited about that as well. I think it's gonna be really
hmm
cool. And I'm also getting ready mentally to go to work again, or well, to work again, not to go to work.
Yeah,
um,
just to
so
sit behind the same desk and do something different.
exactly, yeah. That's what work is right now. So
Oh man, it's weird
um,
times.
it is a strange time. I mean, I think we're so lucky that we work in an industry that is like enables us to work from home so easily. Let's say. I mean,
Yeah, because the turnaround was pretty quick. Like I
yeah.
know. Like when I think back, they mentioned it in the beginning of the week, and by the end of the week, most of the people were already home or something.
That's true. Yeah, it was. I mean, of course, there were some like difficulties here and there, but yeah, in like overall, it was pretty quick. It was pretty seamless, I'd say.
Yeah, it's crazy because like all my friends, they still work in like mechanic jobs or like even my dad, like he still has to go to work. Like they have like a
Yeah,
minimal crew on site, but he still has to go in like every day, and
yeah,
it's so scary. Like as you mentioned, like we're so lucky that we can just like sit at home and just do our daily work.
definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's the same. A lot of my friends, my dad actually also is in the same position. They're all still going to work, and I mean, sometimes the work part isn't even the bad thing, right? It's more about the way to work because you're on the train, whatever.
Yeah, true.
But yeah, so that's it's one more perk of the industry, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, man, we're so lucky. Yeah, it's been it's been actually super nice just sitting at home and working full time on all the different things like the blog and all this kind of stuff that we're talking about and doing this podcast as well. Like
Yeah.
this was if we didn't have like the time off, this was gonna be pretty hectic doing all the editing and then still the blog, and so it's a really nice time to experiment.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, I've seen how busy you've been, and yeah, there's a lot of exciting stuff coming up there. So
Oh yeah.
really interested in all that, how all that turns out.
Yeah. I'm also really interested in when all of this stuff is going to die down. Like now I'm setting up like the fundamentals of stuff,
Hmm.
like the foundations. So I'm wondering when I can find some time to go back into personal work. Because
Oh yeah,
we touched upon it like last week, but yeah, I'm really excited to get back into it and like work on the project. It's been a project that I've been working on for like over a year now, like on and off.
yeah,
And I'm still excited to go back to it. So I think it's really nice that I made the switch somewhere along this project from going to like, oh, I'm interested in this now, so I'm gonna do like a completely new project. And
yes,
instead, I made this change of like, look, I'm just gonna stick to this. I'm gonna finish it no matter what, and I'm just gonna really latch on to something that I want to do.
yeah. That's the thing. that happened to me a couple of times while working on personal projects. Just that cycle of you start it, you get to like a point where I guess you don't want to continue at that time, and then you have like the two directions. You can come back to it at some point, or you just like you leave it in the dust. And that definitely happened to me once or twice, where I just never touched that project again. Right,
Mm-hmm.
and that's
Yeah,
that's so
that's
sad.
actually. Yeah, it is. It is because I was looking at other people's work, and there was I don't know, I don't remember who, but he was sharing like his personal work graveyard basically, and
Mm,
he did like a blog post of like all the stuff that he abandoned. Like I'll look up the link and share it in the show notes. But it was really interesting to see like just how all the half finished projects that were like
yeah,
going somewhere really good, but then he just decided to do something else, and it made me look back at my own hard drive, and man, there is so much stuff on that hard drive, like so many projects that are just
yeah,
abandoned.
yeah, yeah.
It's a
My like
shame.
over half of my Unreal projects folder is just like old stuff that I haven't touched in ages. And yeah, that's the thing. I mean, sometimes I think, maybe it's a good thing because you did what you did. You learned everything you had to learn from that little endeavor, let's say, and then you can move on to something else and do something that you really want to do. But
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes if you're at a certain point, then it wouldn't have taken that much more effort to finish it, and it could have
Hmm.
been such a cool thing. And but I don't know, you just didn't want to, I guess, or didn't
Yeah,
have the time.
it's an act of balance because I definitely agree that you're gonna get to a point in the project where the creative spark or like the creative fulfillment is not there anymore, and then
Mm,
it's really easy to give up because you got to that tedious step. Like we touched upon it in the previous podcast too, where for me that is like detailing all the assets because I
yeah.
work in a modular way, so I have like loads of assets that are fairly basic when I want to add details because I work with trim sheets and all that stuff. But still, like the entire step takes so long that
Mm,
it's something that I easily procrastinate on.
yeah.
Um,
Yeah. That's. I know what you
yeah,
mean. It's you hate that threshold where you're just like, okay, all the fun stuff is done. Now I have to do the actual, the the
yeah.
technical work or the tedious work or something.
How do you deal with overcoming that step?
Um, Kind of what I'm doing right now. I just wait it out.
Mm,
It's because for me, it's always been like that. It's always been so that I have like I said, a couple weeks of working on it intensely, and then a couple weeks of just not wanting to touch it at all. And that's
mm-hmm.
usually how I do overcome it. It of course makes it so that like I just work on it really for a long time because I'm effectively only working on it for half the time.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
but it's for me, it really does work in the end because after a couple weeks where I haven't worked on it, then I look at it again and I'm like, man, I really want to work on this again. I get like a little spark, a little idea in my head, and then at some point I will start again, and then it's like the ball gets rolling again, and it's I don't know if it's the best method of dealing with it, but it's been working for me so far, and it also means that I like in the end your work life balance is a little bit better. I
Mm-hmm.
think because you do have those weeks where you're taking your time for yourself.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
but
it's
yeah,
interesting. Like a lot of people have different ways of dealing with it. Like there's no set way that you deal with this stuff. Like for me, it's more about like taking smaller breaks.
hmm,
I tend to be I don't tend to play like new games because uh, yeah, it takes so long to get into like a new game, and then I
hmm,
always get afraid that if I get hooked, like I get into a
hmm,
phase where I don't work on stuff for like a week. And in my
hmm,
position with like the blog and all the other stuff, like um I can't permit myself to lose like a week's of work basically. Which
yeah,
is it's in the beginning it was tough to get used to because I would sometimes get mad at myself because I was like enjoying the game, and then
And you
it's like,
put
oh, I
yourself
need,
on your
yeah, and then it's like, oh, it's time for the blog. So it was always kind of this weird thing, but I've gotten used to it, and now I tend to enjoy it more because I know that when I do play a game, I play it because I enjoy it, and it's not because like the gameplay is pulling me in or something, or like the loot grind is pulling me in, or is it making it's making it like
Oh,
really addictive or something. Because I tend to play like for example the Division 2, where you can easily get into this routine of like, oh, I need to do my dailies, I need to do my weeklies,
hmm.
I need to do this, I need to do that. Like it's more casually playing it. Like I tend to walk around and just enjoy the environments, and then sometimes I play with a friend,
Yeah.
but yeah, that's it. Like I can easily just drop that game whenever I want to. Like there's nothing really keeping me from not playing for a week.
Gotcha. Yeah, that there is some games that do have like they kind of force you to keep playing, or especially with multiplayer games, right? You always have like friends asking you, "Come on, let's do another round or whatever," right? So
Yeah.
that can be dangerous time wise. Um, yeah, I've been like I told you yesterday. I've been mostly playing Red Dead this week, Red Dead Redemption 2, because I finally wanted to finish it, and that's a game that kind of has both. Like I can just walk around in the environment and enjoy it, um, but also it has these little things that keep you going, right? You have the legendary animals or the stranger missions and all this type of other stuff that you can do,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yeah, not only once was it the case that I was in my bed playing it like at, I don't know, 2 in the morning, and then you just walk across one more person on the sidewalk and they tell you something, and then
Yeah.
it starts off a whole new mission tree, and you have to get going, and you're like, okay, I guess I'm not going to sleep anytime soon now. So
It's like one of those typical, oh, I'll just do one more thing games.
yeah, totally. But
Yeah.
it's man, it's a masterpiece, man. It's amazing. It also brings up the question. I was thinking about that while I was playing it. All that stuff you heard about crunching and the working conditions, right,
hmm
at the studios at the time. Then I'm like, but this game is so great, you know. But then I was thinking, maybe I think I would rather just play mediocre games, or I mean, it's not only mediocre games, but or like games that are good or great and not like great as Red Dead Redemption, let's say, for the rest of my
Mm.
life, if that would mean that all the people that were working on it were happy. You
It's
know what I mean?
yeah, it's a weird one because we tend to really focus on the crunch, which is fair enough. Like crunch shouldn't be a thing in the industry. But
Yeah.
there's also people that are just super passionate about it, and they just do overtime because they really want to work on the thing.
Yeah,
And
that's the thing. It's and the problem is, I think that one can lead to the other, right?
hmm
Like if
yeah,
you are so passionate about it, and you put in that overtime voluntarily, then it might be regarded as like the standard. And I
hmm
think that might be what's happening at studios like Rockstar and Naughty Dog,
yeah,
because
yeah, for sure.
those are like studios that have games that are usually pretty unanimously like praised, right? Those are
hmm
like Uncharted, Last of Us, Red Dead Redemption, GTA, whatever. They're all top tier games, and I think people go to that studio with maybe like a little bit of like naivete, you know what I mean? And then they're
Yeah.
so passionate about it, and they just think, oh yeah, I'm working on this now. I need to put in all my best efforts, and then it's kind of being. I mean, I don't want to like say anyone's doing that, but let's say I would call it exploited a little bit, maybe. You know,
hmm
they're
Yeah,
they're
it's a
yeah.
weird one because I also think that a lot of new people come into the industry, and if they get their chance to work for Naughty Dog or
Mm.
one of those big companies that you mentioned, like it's really tricky to have a peek into the industry and actually know how the inner workings are. And say you're this one person, one environment artist, landing in, I'm just gonna name numbers here, like in a room with like 20 other environment artists,
Mm.
and they're all doing like crazy overtime because they're like
Yeah.
super passionate. Like, you're gonna feel that pressure, especially if it's your first job too. It's gonna
Yeah, yeah,
pressure
yeah.
you to stay longer and be like, oh, I guess this is like the new norm. And then
Yeah,
after a
you don't want to be
while,
the one guy that leaves early, right?
yeah, exactly. But yeah, there were some crazy stories that came out for like people that had to come back into the office because they finished like all their work basically, but they had to come back to the office because they got some new work. And then it's like, oh man, that is so bad. Like if you're just getting dragged back into the office, even if you did like all your tasks for the day or the week or whatever,
Hmm.
and then they just come up with new stuff just to drag you back in, like that shouldn't be the case, man.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it's a big topic in the industry, right? I think it's from what I understand, it's gotten better over the last years rather than
Mm.
worse. But
You
I'm
mean
really
like in
happy that
general?
in general, yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm really happy that I never had to really do it. Yeah, I worked like one night of like 8 hours of overtime,
Hmm.
and that was it for my whole career. So
Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
pretty
That's
happy
that's
with
like
that.
another thing that we really have to mention. Like we haven't worked at those places, so we don't know the inner workings of them.
Oh yeah, totally. Yeah, I don't wanna say anything about the management there or the people there. We don't know what's the reason or how the conditions are.
Hmm. Yeah,
But yeah,
because
just
we
what
we
from
only. Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, no, just from what we've heard, right? Like the whatever 100-hour weeks, all that stuff.
Yeah, and like all the articles that come out of it, like all the typical stuff that all the other people see too. Like
Exactly.
that's
Yeah.
that's the other information that we get.
Yeah. Exactly. So yeah, I was thinking about that. Like, this is such a beautiful game, and of course I want to play more of it. I'd like a Red Dead Redemption 3, but I don't want to. I don't want people to have to work like in bad conditions for it. So
Yeah.
I don't know, but that's the thing. I don't know what their attitude is. Like, I would love to hear the attitude of people that work in those kinds of studios, and if they're like, yeah, I'm done, I'm burned out, I can't do this anymore, or if they're like, well, it was hard, but it was worth it because I'm part of this game now.
Yeah. Like
I
you
don't know
you
what their
pour your
stance
soul
is.
and your identity into that game. So
Totally.
yeah, there must be some fulfillment at the end of it too.
Yeah.
And yeah, game development is tricky, man. Like I've been through periods where I was like, Jesus, is this all I want to do? Like not all I want to do, but like there's so much pressure on you
Hmm.
that it makes you think about like is this a thing you want to be doing for like another 40 years or whatever?
Hmm. Yeah, I
But
mean,
maybe that's also like the your personal mindset
for
because
me,
I
for me it was in the start. It was just weird to work like 40 hours a week because that was the like my first full-time job was in the games industry,
yeah.
and I was like, oh well, yeah, I guess I will have to get up every day for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? Like, I'll have to do this for the rest of my life now. There won't be any summer break. you know, that's just how it is. And but then I think about what else I could be doing. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
there's so many different jobs that I could be doing, and I probably would hate most of them. So I like, yeah, I do have to wake up every morning and go to work, but at least I feel good about where I'm going. You
Yeah.
know, I can't
Yeah,
imagine.
we're
Yeah,
really passionate about the stuff that we do.
totally. Yeah, and I can't imagine working at a place that you hate or that you just don't care for
Hmm.
or that you're just neutral about. Like, even working on something that you're neutral about, it means that every bad day is just a bad day. And now, for me, a bad day is maybe an annoying day where I still work on cool stuff. So in the end, it's still an okay day. You know.
Hmm.
So
Yeah. It's
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 great.
really interesting. I did some other jobs before this. Well, they were mostly like student jobs and like working over the summer or whatever.
Hmm.
So I got like a glimpse into like other industries. Like I worked in like chemical factories and all that stuff where my dad
Ooh.
works. So I got like a taste of like how those other things worked. And man, we're so privileged just sitting on our ass like 8 hours a day and just working on games.
Yeah, it's pretty great. It's I mean, yeah, that's the thing, right? That's what, like, I think every job that is so fun that you spend your free time working on it,
Mm.
is that's a good sign, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's. I do wanna emphasize another thing, like, or go back to another thing,
Mm-hmm.
where it's kind of a bad thing for the industry in general, where like the bar to get in, or like the pressure to get in, is so high that that's also the thing that makes it stand out from other jobs. Because for other jobs you can just apply, you have like your diploma, and you don't have to prove that you did like personal work or like outside of work things, which you don't really have to do in the industry, but like a lot of people are doing it, so they have the upper hand on you. So there's like this weird thing happening where everyone is like really trying to push hard to break into the industry and doing like personal work and like pushing themselves. And
Yeah, and
yeah, I also realized that that might spark some interesting conversations about like mental health and how do you balance like all this work with um, yeah, with just like doing non-work stuff. Like I realized that over time, like I'm a workaholic myself. Like I love to work, but there are moments when I realize that there's just so much work that I'm doing that I realize, like, is this all I want to be doing for like the next 40 years until I retire?
mm,
And even then, I'm probably still gonna work when I retire.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, environment art blog number 12,000, whatever.
Oh God, yeah. Podcast number, whatever.
Yeah,
To
yeah. I
do
mean,
like seniority podcasts.
yeah. That's so. I know it's hard. It's hard for me to express it poignantly. Let's say,
Yeah, yeah.
but
But that's fine. Like I can turn it back to a question. Like, did you
yes.
feel any of that pressure when you were trying to get into the industry? Was it like conscious, or was it more like, oh, everyone else is doing it?
Um. So for me, it was. I definitely had that pressure. I don't know if it came from other people or it came from myself mostly. I think it did come mostly from myself, because the people around me actually they weren't doing it. They weren't working on their portfolio. But I think that in a way also pressured me because I was thinking, oh, no one is doing anything. I think they're all missing the bus. So now I have to be the one that does it, so I can
Oh
get in.
yeah,
Or I
yeah.
don't know. And yeah, I don't know. I don't know if it's a good method to get into the industry. I don't think it is because you probably should try and sleep. But what I did was, yeah, go to uni for 8 9 hours and then come home and work on my personal stuff for another 6 hours and then have like a couple hours of sleep and then rinse and repeat. So
Yeah, yeah.
it's for me, it's really hard. It's a double-edged sword because on the one hand, what I would tell people that want to get in the industry is do your work. Just put time into it. Get better, watch tutorials, do a mentorship, all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then just work, work, work whenever you can. But on the other
Yeah.
hand, like you said, there's this whole mental health situation that comes with that, or just having a work-life balance is so important. Um, for me personally, it worked out because that period of like working really hard on my personal projects next to uni was only maybe a couple months, and then I was already in the industry, and then I didn't have to do
Mm,
that anymore.
yeah.
So I'm extremely lucky in the way that turned out. But yeah, I think if I would have had to do that for, let's say,
Couple of
another half a
years.
year, yeah, or yeah,
Ooh. Yeah.
that would have been really rough, and I don't think that would have been good for me, for my mental health or for
Mm-hmm.
anything.
Yeah. So you actually had time to do personal work on the side, then, aside from uni.
Yes, so well, I don't know if I had time, but I made the time.
Okay.
So I just subtracted it from everything else I was doing.
Yeah.
Um, so in that time, it was crazy when I think like back to it now, because I don't think I saw my friends like for like weeks at a time, you know? Like it was just going to uni, going home, and doing
Yeah.
stuff, working on personal stuff, learning, watching tutorials, all this. And I mean, I learned a lot in this time. It was super helpful, of course, and I don't think I would be where I am now if I hadn't done it. But I don't know if that would be the way that I
Hmm.
would tell people now to do it, because I
It,
think,
it yeah, it probably makes you
yeah,
wonder if that is the only way that you could have gotten to this place, right?
yeah, I think
Because
maybe otherwise it would have taken a little bit longer. But maybe I don't
yeah,
know.
but
Maybe I would be
there's so
crazy then.
many there's so many different aspects to it. Like maybe it would have taken a little bit longer, and then we weren't sitting here doing a podcast. Like it
Yeah.
might turn out in weird ways like that. Because like the reason why I also like talking to you is because like you're really passionate about stuff, and you do personal work still. Like there's a lot of there's a lot of people that don't do personal work, and it's
Mm.
something that um, really makes me gravitate towards people,
Mm.
because I really like to see people that still do personal work, that still have that passion to do like environment art in their free time, because there's a lot of people that don't make the time to do it
Yeah.
because they're too busy doing other stuff, which is fine
Yeah. I
too.
mean, especially if you have a family, right? Then
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
when it's
There's nothing bad
super
about
key.
it, but it's something. Yeah, it's just something about people that still do personal work just really makes me gravitate towards those people.
Yeah. It also means you just always have something fun to talk about, right?
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah,
always
exactly.
have a topic you can ask people. Hey, can you help me with this? I know you've done this before. You know, like I'm gonna do some foliage for my scene. I might come to you and talk to you about foliage and how exactly to approach it and what's the best way. And then I don't know, maybe you have a question for me someday.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure, man. I've been really curious about like proper baking and like making quick models, but I'll have to pick your brain about that at some point. But
Nice.
yeah, you're doing the tutorial anyway, so I might just get
Oh
a glimpse
yeah,
of that when that's done. But
yeah.
I do want to go back to like uni, because it's really interesting to me that you made the time, or that you had the time to work on personal work, because when I think back to my uni days, um, I didn't have the time to do it. Like I sort of turned all my university work into personal projects. Like I
Yes.
tried to like skirt the edges of the brief that they gave us to just turn it into like an environment, even if it wasn't supposed to be. Which was, yeah, sometimes it was really weird when the teacher came over and they were like, "Oh, what are you making?" It's like, "Oh yeah, I'm doing this. Like this is still within the brief, right?" And they were like, I guess."
Mm.
Because our school was especially when I was in it. I don't know how it changed since then, but it was super competitive. At least how I saw it. Like I had the same routine. I went to uni, I went home, and I worked more. Like
Mm.
until I went to sleep. Like we also played some games every once in a while, but like that was 4 years that I didn't really
Jeez.
go out to party that much.
Yep.
And it was like whenever we partied, it was like full on, because it was only like a couple of times a year, you know? So you gotta
Uh
go
huh.
full blast.
Uh huh. I might know what you're talking about.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
But
So
it was really interesting to see it from other people's perspective, because we had some other people in the school that were super talented. We had this person who was already like a year above me when I joined, and he was good at drawing. In the beginning, I only know him to be good at drawing, but
mm,
then he was also really skilled at programming, and then he could build like full good looking environments too. And I was just like, I was so demotivated in the beginning, because that was like a guy that could do everything,
mm,
and I was just like, what? Like, how do I compete with a guy like that? Like, he's a beast. Like, he's on another level.
yeah.
But then it's always interesting to see them after uni, because I just want to say, like, I was never the best at things, but I was
Mm,
consistent. consistency was a thing I have going for me. And the people that were really good and were like monsters in their own right, like creative beasts, they they got into the industry and they sort of fizzled out. Like they're just doing other stuff now. Like they're not as passionate as I am. So
Yeah.
it's always interesting to see the contradiction between someone who really works in sprints and then someone who's like me, who's not the best at it, but is consistent.
You're like a marathon runner.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
I never realized it until I was in my second year of working professionally or something. Um, until I realized that I looked back at all the other people, and I I was surprised that they didn't made it further than I was expecting them to. You know?
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, right? Some people do have that spark, but then, like you said, it fizzles out because either they do find out that maybe they're good at it, but this is not what they want to do, or maybe that's just, hard work and they don't want to do it. They don't want to put
Mm-hmm.
in all that extra time. So, coming back to your original question about how I had time or what I was, right? Wasn't that your question about how I was still doing like side stuff at university?
Yeah, it was more
Um,
about like the pressure. Like, did you feel the pressure of like
yeah.
just having to work like all the time?
So you said that you were doing like you were transforming your uni work into personal work.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I tried that a little bit, and then I just realized it's not gonna work because the way that we were working at uni, we just didn't have time to like polish and finish stuff, and that's not what I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
going for. I wanted to make like finished things. So what I did is, I don't know, maybe it was kind of a dick move towards the people in on my project team, but I said I'm gonna put in all the time that like I need, like eight. I think it was 8 hours or 6 hours a day, whatever it was. Um, but then I'm not gonna put in overtime into this project. I'm gonna make enough to make it work. But all
Yeah,
the extra time I have, I'm gonna put into my portfolio because from the start, or more or less from the start, I kind of realized that what we're doing at uni wasn't going to be ending up in my
enough.
portfolio. Yeah,
Yeah.
it didn't have the
That's
quality, didn't have the time, didn't have the polish to be a portfolio piece. So I
yeah.
was like, yeah, I'm gonna take my time at home and do what I need to do. And at the start, I was like super. I was going to every class, and just out of like respect for the teachers, But
Mm-hmm.
later, I then also realized because I had like we had classes that are I think that are really cool for like concept artists and stuff, or animators. I mean, we had a like we had a class that was called Anatomy of Mythical Creatures.
Oh God. Okay.
So yeah, it's like how does a what is it, like a hippogriff, whatever,
Yeah.
like the yeah, how do they work in that what's the word,
Anatomically.
anatomically.
I
Yeah,
wasn't sure about that word either.
yeah. How they work anatomically. So because of course you, even if you're making a mythic creature, right, it has to look believable, whatever. So but that doesn't really help me when I want to do environment art, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's great if you want to be a creature artist or a concept artist for characters or creatures, whatever. But
Yeah.
yeah, so I just stopped going to that class, or I went to the class, but I was on my PC in class doing my own stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the teachers actually were okay with it, but yeah, and then yeah, so you do have to prioritize your own stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's what I ended up doing, and it did work out for me. And I think my teammates weren't too angry with me because I did still do, you know, the
Yeah. Like, I sort of had the same phase when I had classes that I didn't really enjoy or like didn't really find that useful back then.
mm,
I was just like, look, if I get a 5, that's it. Like, I just need to hit the bar, like the lowest entry point, and then I'm
mm.
good. That
Yeah, for me, yeah, that was definitely a similar thought process as what I had.
mhm. Yeah, it's really interesting to hear like how we tackled school different in different ways.
Hmm.
But man, it was so intimidating for me. Like there were some people that were just like the top of their class, and um, this weird switch happened in the fourth year, where everyone came up to me if they had like Unreal Engine questions, because I was one of the first people that really
Hmm.
got into Unreal Engine and was like almost working in it like full time. So if anyone had like an Unreal Engine question, they would come to me.
Hmm. Yeah, that's what happened to me with Substance Painter, because I
Yeah,
got into
yeah.
that fairly early. Well, at least early for university. And
Hmm.
then I remember the first time that like I think I was in the first or second semester, and someone from the fourth, like from the last semester, asked me something about Substance Painter. I
Hmm.
felt so great about myself.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It's an interesting feeling because I never made the realization that on some level I was now the guy that was like seen as like, oh, he knows a lot about Unreal Engine. Like people were
Mm.
looking up to me, but I never made that realization again, like until like a couple of years after uni when I was really like thinking back.
Mm.
And yeah, it was interesting. And now you get into the workforce and you're like a noob again because everyone else knows more about Unreal Engine than me.
Oh, yeah, man. It's like what is it? Imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
Imposter
yeah.
syndrome is definitely something to consider. I don't know. It's such a weird feeling, like especially when you come to like a big company such as Ubisoft. When you're such a, I mean,
Hmm.
I when I came to Ubisoft, I had like I think like barely 2 years of experience,
Yeah.
and I just come from like a small outsourcing studio, and I don't know. I'd worked with bigger clients before, but still, it's like this. These are like this is the real deal, This is where it's at, and then you meet people like I don't know, Alex, for example, and you're just like, oh my god, this guy, he knows so much. I know nothing. You
Oh,
know, yeah,
Alex Nechitaylo.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. But I like him because he's such a quiet personality. But
yeah, but
then
he's a beast.
you just know that he only has like a couple of pieces on his portfolio, like a couple of materials. But man,
Yeah,
he's so good. Like
uh,
he's so nice to talk to as well.
that's another weird thing. Uh, like there's two different people, I would say, and I think maybe that's also what you were talking about earlier with the taking time for personal work later. Is that for example, my lead artist for a long time at Elite 3D, he is, yeah, one of the most talented artists that I know. Probably, he's amazing at 3ds Max. He knows all the buttons. He knows each and it's every single one button in
Yeah, yeah.
fucking 3ds Max, right? At least it felt so. And he, yeah, he hadn't posted any arts like anything on ArtStation for ages, and he's not like, I don't know, he's not like a name that because
Hmm.
he's just in the background more, right? And then there's people that they I like, for example, I would say I do it. I take pretty good care of my art station because I like having this hub where everything I do is and
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
and stuff like that, right?
Like people get to know your work through ArtStation, where
Yes.
like the people that you're talking about, and I'll bring up an example from myself too. I work with Mark Cox. Like
Hmm.
he was one of the five original people at Frontier Development,
Oh,
and he was my lead artist. But he's so calm and collective. Like you don't really you don't really realize like all the experience that he has.
yeah.
But man, it was so. And like the same thing. Like he has a Twitter, but he has like a different handle. Like he doesn't really want to be recognized with that name. And then he doesn't have an art station. He doesn't have art online. Like he doesn't have anything like that. But
Yeah.
he's one of the bigger people inside of that studio, even if he doesn't want to admit it. Like he's he's a team favorite for sure.
Yeah. I
But
mean, I get
it's
maybe that's an extrovert introvert thing. Maybe we're just extroverts and we want to show everyone what we're doing, or maybe they're just not working on anything, so they don't have to show anything. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
where
Like
that split is.
he's also like he's been around for a while, so
Yeah,
he's not set out to like impress other people, or he's not
that's
looking for a
yeah,
new job. Like he's just like, this is his job. He does it like 150%, like with full passion.
yeah.
But that's just it. Like he goes
That's
home and does other stuff.
yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. He doesn't have to prove it to
Hmm.
anyone, right?
Yeah,
But
that brings us to a good point though. Like, how intimidating was like your first job and like getting into it?
hmm. So the interview process was pretty basic at Elite. It was pretty quick. So that wasn't so intimidating. The interview process with Ubisoft was a lot more intimidating. um, I
Why
think
do you think
we
that
had
is? Was that because of the
because I
big name?
no, that was because I had my first call with you, and you're just such an intimidating person. No,
It was because of
um,
me. Oh, thanks.
no, yeah, it was because I just had so many more interviews. I think I had 4 in total or 3. I don't know.
Mm.
And with Elite, it was just 1. So that didn't feel as intimidating. I think at the time I was so, let's say, preoccupied with the excitement of moving to another country
Oh,
because
yeah,
I
yeah.
had, yeah, that was the first, like, I lived I lived here with my mom still, and then for the first time, I didn't only move out of my mom's place, but I also moved to an entirely different country that I didn't speak the language in. So it was
Yeah.
that was like what I was thinking about mostly. So um, I didn't really realize I was excited for the job until I stepped foot into the building, you know. Um, and then it was excitement, but it was more like joyful excitement. It wasn't really like being scared or anything, or like being anxious.
Hmm.
When I got my first tasks, like my first real task to work on, then you do feel the pressure because it's not like uni where, well, if it's broken, then I guess you can do it again, or well, it'll be broken. No, it has to be correct. It has to be fixed. It has to be done.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's your responsibility. So that weight of that responsibility, definitely I felt that at some point. um but it didn't feel intimidating just because you usually don't really work with intimidating people, right?
Hmm.
You work with lovable nerds just like yourself, you know that all they want to do is just do cool video games,
Yeah,
like
create
make
pretty
cool
stuff.
games. Exactly, like why they're not the most intimidating people in the world, I would say.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, I get really stressed when I enter like a new building or like a new work environment or whatever, because I guess it must have something to do with like how others perceive me. Like I
mm,
always tend to be like really quiet in the beginning until I kind of figure out like how everyone reacts to certain stuff, and then I kind of like open up a bit more,
mm,
which was yeah, it was really interesting, especially on the first job. I still remember. I don't remember that much of it. Like I don't remember like the specific task or like stuff that I was doing. I still have some screenshots though, but I don't know which one of them was the first. But anyway, like yeah, I was just sitting there at my desk, like trying to figure stuff out by myself, and
oh,
then um, Chris Martin, he was sort of like my mentor back in those days.
mm,
Like he would just like poke me every couple of hours and say like, "Hey, how's it going?" And then it's like, "Oh well, I have this issue with this," and it was like really quiet and like
yeah,
downspoken about it. And then it sort of made me realize that it's okay to ask questions.
oh,
I
yeah,
don't I don't know why I thought that I couldn't ask questions, because maybe it was like that intimidation factor of like you're surrounded by industry professionals
yeah. And
that.
you don't want to be the new guy that doesn't know how to do whatever.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And they quote unquote like know everything, which is not
Yeah,
true, but you
yeah,
think so, especially the first time that you come in the office. And
yeah.
then
I
like I
think,
slowly I slowly opened up and like started asking more questions. And then I made this realization that that is just the quickest way to learn stuff. So I
yep,
just kept asking questions. Like whenever I had like, I would try it out first. Like if it didn't work for like half an hour or an hour, like I would try it myself. But then if it didn't work out, then I would just ask.
Same. Yes, I think that's probably the best way to do it. To try it first, if you can see like if you can do it on your own. But yeah, um, asking questions, especially in the beginning, it's like you said, it's the easiest way to learn. It's also the easiest way to get to know new colleagues, man. It's
Yeah.
that's how I found friends at the start. It's just you ask them some questions and then you start talking about other stuff, and then you're not alone anymore in your new job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's a weird feeling to because I think what's weirdest to me almost always is that if you're getting into a company, all the structure is already there. You know, the
Yeah.
like the corporate structure, of course, but also the structure like the relationships between the people, and you don't know any of it, but you kind of have to make yourself fit. You know,
Mm.
you're like, oh, I want to like usually on the first day you're gonna go to lunch with someone, right? Like, and then somebody will ask you, hey, do you want to go to lunch with us? Then I was like, oh yeah, can this guy come? But then maybe this guy that you just met and you like him, maybe the other guys don't like him. You know, you have to understand all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's always these different little groups of people and other stuff that maybe there's like traditions at different places or things they
Mm.
do differently. And you have to. That's why I think I try to be like what you said as well, like kind of laying low, being like more quiet in the first couple of days, and just doing like some recon, just checking out the
Yeah.
situation and how you can make yourself like or yeah, just to find your place inside of that constellation.
Yeah. Do some game dev recon.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
I like that
exactly.
term. And it's really interesting, like how other people deal with it too. Like I don't really have the feeling of people being split into groups in our current environment, like in our current studio. Not to the same degree that it was at Frontier. Like at Frontier, you would have like, oh, these are the environment artists working on Planet Coaster, for instance,
Hmm.
and they would only talk to each other,
Oh yeah.
and
No.
it wouldn't like go to another project. Like some people would have a connection here and there, but it would mostly stick to the same core group.
Hmm.
Where maybe this is because I joined earlier than you, like here in the current studio. I feel like there's obviously there's still groups that sort of go out by themselves for sure. But maybe it's also because I work with a lot of them, and it's like I can go to like every corner of the office now and just talk to like a random person and not feel like I'm interjecting something, which
Oh
is
yeah.
a
No,
really
no.
nice feeling.
Totally. That's true. Yeah, because especially because it's such a collaborative way of working.
Hmm.
I would say yeah, the same as you. Like I go to anyone there, and I'm like any corner, and I'll know someone pretty well.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, but of course, I mean, it wasn't. Yeah, I mean, there's still like these groups that go out to lunch together, whatever. But what I mean is like there is still this feeling that, for me at least, that you have to first kind of get to know all the routines, all the structures
Oh
at a new
yeah, yeah,
job,
for sure,
and
for
then
sure.
fit in not only work wise but also socially.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, man. Okay, we're getting close to like the 15-minute mark almost. I
Okay,
wanna end the podcast with like one question that we get from our Patreon supporters.
okay.
I'm gonna pick a random one, which is a good one. Oh, I kind of like this one from Ovi. Like, what was your dream studio, and was it Ubisoft? It's like super direct, but I kind of like it. I my answer to this question was I've been thinking about it for like a bit, but my dream studio was always like Bethesda, like working on a Fallout game. That was like my dream job and like dream studio. But with the release of Fallout 76 and like taking off my rose tinted glasses, I just slowly started realizing that the engine itself might be a little bit outdated and needs some work. Um, that doesn't take away from like the creative fulfillment, but yeah, just seeing the game and like playing the latest one, that was, man. I went into that game. I bought the collector's edition. Like for everyone out there, like I was one of those suckers that bought the helmet edition.
No.
Because I was like, look, this is a game I've been looking forward to for so long. And then I
Yeah.
started playing it and I was like so disappointed. And it changed my entire look on like that studio. So yeah, it wasn't Ubisoft, but Ubisoft was pretty high up there. Not to like praise because we work for Ubisoft now, but I just love how big the worlds are at Ubisoft. Like
Oh,
how
yeah.
big spaces they create, and it looks and it is so fun to work on them too.
Yeah.
So yeah, what was your dream studio, man? Was it Ubisoft?
I had a couple. Actually, I do remember that I think when I was leaving uni, I said, uh, at some point I want to work on a Far Cry game, which is a Ubisoft property. So I guess it kind of was. Um,
Mm.
but it
Oh,
kind of
like you
switched.
didn't realize by then that it was a Ubisoft
No,
property.
no, yeah, I just wasn't thinking in terms of Ubisoft. Or in terms of studio. I was thinking about the games I want to work on,
Oh,
I
okay, yeah,
guess.
yeah.
And it was just like I was such a huge fan of Far Cry. I was like, this is what I want to do at some point. Um, and what else? I mean, Naughty Dog was a like a big name, of course, just because I don't know. I think that was like the dream studio of 90% of people at my university. Arcane Studios was super
Mm.
interesting to me because I love that art style. It's man, it I love that. Yeah, the painterly look and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I just don't want to move to France, and I don't really want to move to the US right now either. So I don't know if it's ever gonna happen. I don't.
Yeah,
I
that
don't know.
that scraps that off the list.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the thing is, I try to tell that to my friends that are just starting out in the industry or that want to get into the industry is I I try not to think about it because it never happens in the way that you think.
Yeah.
Because when I was working on my first job at Elite 3D, I was thinking of so many different studios that could be cool to work on, and then I saw a job opening for Guerrilla Games, and
Hmm.
um, and then I applied, and it was some confusion. I almost got it, didn't get it in the end. Um, but before that point, I had never even thought about going to Guerrilla Games. But then, it's like the opportunity strikes, and then you think about it, and I think it would have been a great place to work at. So, but I couldn't have planned it beforehand. And the same with Ubisoft now. It's just I had um, I had talked to one of our producers, and because I was originally from Berlin, he just invited me to come over for just like a studio tour, and he told
Mm.
me, yeah, whenever we have an open position, just apply, and
Yeah.
that's what I did like half a year later. So it's it's like I could have thought about all the different studios that I wanted to apply at, but for different reasons I couldn't have made it work because maybe they weren't looking for people, or I would have needed some kind of visa, right? Whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, so what I try to tell people is just look for opportunities, and something will come along. And then,
Yeah.
so yeah, maybe I mean I guess that kind of I don't know. It's kind of I'm not really answering the question. I'm sorry,
No, no,
but
it's fine,
that's
man.
the thing.
Like it's
Yeah.
good advice because I had to think back to when I was in uni and I oh it was even before uni, like in high school when I was doing like graphic design. And I remember in one of the classes, like I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was like, "Oh, it would be cool if you could work for the Fallout games."
Hmm.
And that was always something that stuck because we were both like really big fans of the Fallout games,
Same.
and it's something that stuck. And she was like, "Oh, like Fallout 3 just released, like or like it came out like a year or two past."
Hmm.
And she was like, "Oh, it would be cool if you can work on Fallout 4." And I sort of set my sights on that, and it kind of blinded me. Like it gave me a goal, which was a good thing, but it also blinded me to like other opportunities. Because whenever, like, if I finished uni, like that was the first
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
company I applied for.
Instead of looking for something maybe more achievable, more realistic.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
Yeah.
look, they're not gonna look at me, especially the work that I had. Like, my work was not really outstanding.
Mm.
It was just good enough.
Hmm.
They're not gonna pay all the stuff that they have to pay just to bring you over to America, just
Mm.
to start working on like a Fallout property. They're not gonna do that. It's not a wise business decision from their end. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
that
think.
that that rejection just made me realize that maybe I need to broaden my horizon a bit.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I think it might be good to have something in the back of your head, like some
Hmm.
kind of goal way, way in the distant future. Um, but like I said, I think it's not a good idea to get hung up in specifics
Hmm.
because, like I said, you can't make them have a job opening for you. You know, of course,
Yeah.
if you're good enough, then maybe they'll be like, well, I guess this guy is just so great, we'll have to take him. Um, but I think just be on the lookout for stuff. Don't rush it. Like especially, I think of that question makes more sense if you're still in uni. I think if you're already in the industry, then you shouldn't be thinking about that too much
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
especially then you can just find your way because especially if you're in the industry, a lot of the jobs you get through I don't know like a friend that you know that can recommend you or
Hmm.
something like that, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, don't get too hung up on that. Just I don't know, go with the flow, I guess. See what the world throws at you, and see what you wanna grab.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure. Especially because your perception of the games industry and like games in general is gonna change once
Oh,
you enter the industry.
immensely so.
Yeah, so we can't really you can't really prepare other people for that, like how it's gonna change. But you're gonna see games as they really are instead of just from a consumer standpoint.
Mm,
And you're gonna get to know like all the engines that you get to work in, like all the structure that goes in behind it, and it's gonna completely change how you see games.
yes. Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's pretty much what you said, right? Before you were just a consumer, and now you might still be a consumer, but you also have that insight from what it means to be working on games, what the whole process behind them is,
Hmm.
and also,
Especially,
yeah.
yeah, especially in my case when I was looking at the Fallout games. Like now, before I was just looking at like, look, these are like massive worlds. They have like really unique stories in them. Like I love all the smaller stories that go on in them. And
Mm,
now I look at it from like a standpoint like, oh, like the engine might be a little bit outdated. Like some of the texture work is not that clear anymore. Like yeah, it's the engine itself is showing its age somewhat.
yeah.
Maybe that's gonna change in like the next installments, but yeah, like I went from this perception of like, look, these are massive games that have really cool stories in them, and I love to walk around and just experience the world and like really get immersed in that world. To like, I still love to get immersed in this world, but there's also all this baggage of like, what if I were to work on it? And how does the engine work? Like, how does the structure work? Like, what do you
Mm,
get to do on those games? Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes into making games instead of just like playing them.
yeah. Yeah, and you see the studios in different lights as well.
Yeah, exactly. All
Like
right, man.
now, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really really good answer on the Dream Studio question. I think
Yeah,
we hit on a lot of subjects that we can easily expand upon again.
totally.
All right, so that was the end of the podcast, I guess. I think that was a good way to end it, like with the question at the end. So
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the next one, man. This was
Yeah, man.
it was nice talking to you again.
You too, buddy.
So that's going to do it for today, people. Hope you enjoyed our little chat. If you want to hear more stuff like this, you can check out the playlist on the right and make sure to like and subscribe so we can get a feel for this type of content. We will continue to improve the audio quality and structure of this podcast going forward. If you're looking for more resources to help your journey as an environment artist, you can head over to the website, which is linked down in the description below, where you will find stuff like the weekly vlog, tips and tricks, tutorials, and much more. Also, if you're interested in our portfolio, show notes, or the Beyond Extend website itself, then you can find those links in the description below too. But that's going to do it from our side. Thanks so much for joining us, and thanks to all of our awesome Patreon supporters who made this possible.